This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. I've often spoken about life on earth as a school, and so it is. I'll say a bit more about this today because it's important to know in your depths that life is your greatest teacher and that it teaches wisely and compassionately. This is the truth, and knowing this will help you. It will help you be at peace. It will help you be more loving. It will help you stop suffering, and it will make it more likely that you will learn what you need to learn and fulfill your life purpose. If you are God, and you are, it might seem contradictory to say that life is a school. A school for whom? Does God need to go to school? Life is a school for the soul. So now I will have to define what I mean by soul. The soul is the aspect of God that takes on lifetime after lifetime in the third dimension, which is the physical dimension, and carries on as a seed form once the soul graduates from the physical dimension. Although learning also takes place in higher dimensions, the physical dimension in particular is a school for the soul. The physical dimension provides basic training for the soul. It's where the soul becomes educated, trained sufficiently to be able to participate in the greater hierarchy, which is designed to serve all of creation. Unlike higher dimensions, the third dimension is not a dimension of service, although service naturally happens, particularly in your later lifetimes. The purpose of the physical dimension is to provide the lessons you need to return to love. When the soul separates or spins off from God, it must learn certain basics, which turn it back toward God. And this is what is learned in third dimension. You're learning the basics of love so that you can eventually serve in the higher dimensions. Love is learned in third dimension by first experiencing an absence of love. As a young soul, you do not know how to love. It has to be learned. When you're a newborn soul, you are in fear, and you know little of love. Love has to be learned from those around you. You may ask, why? And I can only say that this is just how it is. The task of all your lifetimes is to learn the truth, that love prevails throughout the universe, and there is nothing but love at the core of life. It takes eons for most souls to discover this, and to learn to live in love and appreciation of your oneness with all. The soul must learn the falseness of fear and the wisdom of life, that life always has your best interests at heart in what it teaches and how it teaches. Life is always teaching, and it is wise in how it does this. How can I convince you of this? I can only tell you this is true, and you must realize it yourself. You must come to know this so solidly that it's unquestioned, which is the case at the end of your incarnations in third dimension. Everything and everyone is a teaching, but for you to understand what I mean by this, I need to clarify a few things. First, more often than not, you will not know what life is teaching you. And importantly, you don't need to know this with your mind. Your soul knows, and the lesson or lessons, since you're often learning many things at once, are recorded there. In your depths, you do know what you're learning. But the beauty of life is that you don't have to know what life is teaching you to learn what you need to learn. You don't even need to realize that you've learned something. So you can relax and just know that you are learning what you need to learn, because learning is inevitable. Sometimes you may come to a wrong conclusion as a result of an experience and start telling yourself an untrue story. But even that will eventually be overcome, in this lifetime or another, because believing something that is untrue is painful, and that suffering will eventually get you to abandon that story, that belief. There is no hurry for you to learn what you need to learn. The soul is not in a hurry to learn its lessons. It's having useful experiences. You could look at it this way. There are an infinite number of ways you can learn what you need to learn, and you get to choose. If you go down one path, that's fine. If you choose another, that's fine. Whatever path you choose, you'll learn something from. The only difference is that some paths will be easier and less painful for you as a human being than others. The soul is not particularly concerned with the ease or lack of ease by which you learn. It has no judgments about this. Your ego has judgments about its experiences, but your soul does not. Your soul is equally fine with every experience, because it trusts life to bring you home regardless of what path you take. The suffering in life is like a rudder. It steers you away from more pain and toward more ease. Suffering is a trusty teacher that brings everyone home in good time. Suffering is not punishment. It's not a sign that you are bad or that you're wrong. It's more like a sign along the road telling you which way to go. Like a road sign, suffering is neutral. It's not personal. However, your ego tells a story about your suffering that makes it mean something about you personally. I'm stupid to have made that choice. Bad things always happen to me. I'll never get it right. I won't ever be good enough. The ego makes your suffering about you. This only heaps more suffering onto suffering. What a dilemma. But that's the lesson, isn't it? The lesson is to see that you take life personally, when your suffering is just telling you to take another route if you want to be happy and return home to love. What if you saw everyone and everything as a teaching? I'm not the first to suggest this, but that is what I'm suggesting. You are here to learn, and life is the teacher. It is wise. It has a design. It is not capricious, random, or cruel. Life is intelligent. It is intelligence itself. Life is God in form, God acting in form upon form. God plays all the parts, not just some, but all the parts. Sit with this a moment. God is not absent from any form, but playing its role perfectly through every form. You think you're someone separate from God, and God lets you play that out. God lets you pretend that you aren't God just for the fun of it, for the adventure, for the surprise, to see what you'll do. And whatever you do is fine with God. Unlike the God of your religions, God, the supreme intelligence behind all life, has no preferences and no judgments. And why would God have a preference or a judgment when God is behind all of it, either acting within creation quite purely or allowing that creation to make its own choices? If God had a preference about what you might choose, God would simply not allow that. And sometimes that does happen. Sometimes God overrides your free will and says, "No, let's not go in that direction, but another. There's a better choice for you." Your idea that God sits on a throne in heaven watching you, evaluating you, and passing judgment is a child's idea of God, derived from one's relationship with one's parents. God is not capable of judging, because God is only capable of love. The only thing that is capable of judging is the ego. So apparently, since God created the ego, God wanted to have an experience of acting apart from love just to see what that was like. God even loves the ego. Even the ego serves God's plan. There is no judgment coming from God or from any higher dimensional beings working on God's behalf, such as ourselves. Only love. Love of you, love of life, love of all of creation. It's impossible for God to do anything but love. Evil is only possible because God allows it in order to have that experience. What's it like to lose touch with love so completely that you're willing to harm yourself, harm your own creation? This third dimension is an experiment of sorts in which God allows the experience of being divorced from love in order to teach love. For how could love be truly known and appreciated without knowing its opposite or its absence? This dimension teaches through opposites, and this is no less true of love. So that is what's going on in this training ground. Such pain, suffering, and hurting of one another is not experienced in higher dimensions, however, so it would be a mistake to draw conclusions about God and the rest of creation on all other dimensions based on your relatively brief experience of third dimension. It is dense here, to be sure, but you are here only for a relatively brief time in your entire experience as a soul. Please remember that everything and everyone is teaching you something. In that sense, it can be said that it is all good. Everything serves life. Everything serves creation. Everything serves God. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to learn the truth. I am with you always.